The shuttle was breaking apart around him when Park Jun opened his eyes. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms screamed in his ears. Through the cracked window, he could see fire and smoke and the green blur of a jungle rushing up to meet him. His hands moved on their own, pulling straps tighter, grabbing the emergency handle above his head. Somewhere behind him, he heard Kang Su screaming his name. Then the world turned upside down. Metal tore like paper. The shuttle split in two pieces. June saw Su's section break away, her escape pod firing its rockets and shooting upward toward the sky. Good. She would make it to orbit. She would survive. His section had no such luck. The jungle swallowed him whole. Trees exploded as the wreckage crashed through them. June felt his body slam against the restraints again and again. Then everything went black. When he woke up, the first thing he noticed was the silence. The alarms had stopped. The fires had died. He was hanging upside down in what remained of his seat, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. Outside the broken hole, he could see alien trees with black bark and leaves that glowed faint, blue in the fading light. Barathnin, the planet they had come to survey. The planet that every report marked as extremely dangerous. June pressed the release on his restraints, fell hard onto the ceiling below him. Pain shot through his left arm. Not broken, but badly bruised. He crawled out through a hole in the hole and stood on soft ground covered with strange moss. The sun was setting. 2 moons were already visible in the purple sky. A voice crackled in his helmet. "June, can you hear me? This is Bora." Bora was the AI built into his survival suit. Her voice was calm and steady, just like always. June felt a small relief knowing she was still working. "I hear you," he said. "What is our situation?" "Your section of the shuttle crashed approximately 40 kilometers from the planned landing zone. Kang Su's escape pod successfully launched and is transmitting an emergency signal. However, our long-range communication array is destroyed. I cannot contact the survey station." June looked around at the jungle. The trees were massive, taller than any building he had ever seen. Strange sounds were starting to fill the air as darkness crept closer. Clicks, whistles, and something else. Something deeper. A low rumble that he felt more than heard. "How long until rescue?" he asked, calculating. Bora paused for 3 seconds. "Due to Barathnin's current orbital position and the damage to communication relays, rescue is not possible for at least 90 local days." 90 days. 3 months on this planet, alone. June took a deep breath. He had survived worse. He had been a soldier before becoming a survey engineer. He knew how to stay alive in bad situations. He just needed to stay calm and think clearly. "What do we know about the local wildlife?" he asked. Barathnin is home to several apex predator species. The most dangerous are classified as void stalkers by previous survey teams. They hunt in coordinated packs. They track prey using heat signatures, sound, and electromagnetic fields. They are extremely intelligent. How intelligent? More intelligent than any predator species in recorded human contact. Previous survey teams reported that void stalkers learn and adapt to new threats within hours. They communicate using infrasound. They set traps. They test prey before attacking. June felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cooling air. What is the survival rate for humans alone on this planet's surface? Bora was quiet for a moment. No human has survived alone on Barathnin's surface for more than 3 days. The void stalkers always find them. Always. That was not a word June liked to hear. He looked at the crashed shuttle. There was salvage here. Tools, supplies, maybe some weapons, if he was lucky. He needed to work fast. The sun was almost gone. For the next hour, June pulled everything useful from the wreckage. A survival kit. 3 days of emergency food. A water filter. Medical supplies. A damaged plasma cutter that might still work. Some fuel cells, wire, metal sheets. His personal blade, still sharp. He was organizing his supplies when the howling began. It started far away. A single voice rising from somewhere deep in the jungle. Then another voice answered. Then another. Soon the air was filled with overlapping calls, high and low, near and far. It was like nothing June had ever heard before. Not quite animal. Not quite mechanical. Something in between. The Voidstalkers were waking up. June grabbed his blade and stood with his back against the shuttle wreckage. His heart was beating fast now, but his hands were steady. He had faced enemies before. He could face this. Then he saw it. The creature emerged from between two massive trees, moving without making a sound. It was bigger than June had expected. Taller than a man. 6 limbs. 4 for walking, and 2 that ended in curved claws. Its body was covered in smooth black skin that seemed to absorb the fading light. It had no eyes. Instead, its head was covered in dozens of thin tendrils that moved constantly. Tasting the air, it was the most frightening thing June had ever seen. The Voidstalker stopped about 20 meters away. Its tendrils pointed directly at June. He could feel it studying him, learning him, testing him. This was what Bora had warned him about. The creatures did not attack immediately. They observed first. They wanted to understand their prey before they killed it. June gripped his blade tighter. He knew he could not fight this thing. Not here, not now. But he refused to show fear. He stood straight and met the creature's eyeless gaze with his own eyes. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the Voidstalker made a sound. A low, clicking noise that seemed to come from deep inside its chest. It circled slowly to the left, then to the right. Its tendrils never stopped moving. June turned with it, always facing the creature, never looking away. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the Voidstalker stopped. It made another clicking sound. Then, slowly, it backed away into the darkness between the trees. It was gone. For now, June let out a breath he did not know he was holding. His legs felt weak. His hands were shaking. But he was alive. Bora's voice came through his helmet. The creature has retreated approximately 200 meters. It is still observing from a distance. More are gathering nearby. I count at least 7 separate heat signatures. 7 of them. And that was just what Bora could detect. June looked up at the 2 moons hanging in the alien sky. 90 days. That was how long he needed to survive. 90 days of being hunted by creatures that had never failed to kill their prey. He thought about what Bora had said. No human had ever survived more than 3 days here. A small smile crossed his face. He had always enjoyed proving people wrong. 90 days, he said out loud, knowing the creatures could hear him. Fine. Then I will give you 90 reasons to stay away. The hunt was beginning, but Park June was not going to be prey. Not tonight. Not ever. He had work to do. The first 3 days were about survival. The next 12 were about learning. Park June did not run blindly through the jungle like a frightened animal. He moved carefully, watching everything, remembering everything. The Voidstalkers were hunting him, yes. But he was also hunting them, not to kill them. He knew he could not do that. He was hunting their secrets. Every night, the creatures came closer to wherever he was hiding. Every night, he watched them through the darkness, studying their movements. And every night he learned something new. On the 4th day, June found the thermal vents. They were scattered throughout the jungle. Cracks in the ground where hot steam rose from deep below the surface. The heat was intense, almost painful to stand near. But what interested June was the behavior of the stalkers around these vents. They avoided them completely. He watched a pack of 5 stalkers hunting some small animal through the trees. The creature ran toward a cluster of thermal vents, and the stalkers stopped. They circled the area, their tendrils twitching with confusion. But they would not cross into the zone of intense heat. June understood immediately. The stalkers tracked prey using heat signatures. The thermal vents created so much heat in so many directions that the creatures became disoriented. They could not focus on their target. That night, June made his first fire. He used the damaged plasma cutter to ignite some dry vegetation. The flames rose high and hot, and June sat as close to them as he could stand. Within minutes, he heard the familiar clicking sounds of approaching stalkers. They came close, closer than they had before. But when they reached the edge of the firelight, they stopped. Their tendrils pulled back against their heads. Their bodies tensed. One of them made a strange whining noise. They were afraid. June added more fuel to the fire, making it burn brighter and hotter. The stalkers retreated further into the darkness. Fire was his first weapon. On the 7th day, he discovered the power of sound. Bora had told him that the stalkers communicated using infrasound. Sounds too low for human ears to hear. June's survival suit had basic audio equipment. He spent hours adjusting it to detect these low frequencies. What he heard amazed him. The stalkers were constantly talking to each other. Their calls carried information about prey location, pack movements, and territorial boundaries. It was a language of sorts, simple but effective. June had an idea. He rewired the speakers in his damaged helmet, forcing them to produce frequencies far below normal human hearing. The first test was a failure. The second test made his own head hurt. But the third test worked perfectly. He aimed the speakers at a nearby stalker and activated them. The creature reacted as if it had been struck. It spun around, tendrils waving wildly, searching for the source of the sound. Other stalkers nearby did the same. They crashed into each other, confused and agitated, making sounds of alarm. June had found his second weapon. He could speak their language, not with words, but with noise. Disruptive noise that hurt their sensitive hearing and made them afraid. On the 10th day, he found the fungus. It grew in the darkest parts of the jungle, a thick orange growth that smelled like rotting metal. Most creatures avoided it, including the stalkers. June collected a sample and asked Bora to analyze it. The fungus produces a chemical compound similar to the territorial markers used by void stalkers, Bora reported. They use these markers to claim hunting grounds. The scent tells other packs to stay away. June looked at the orange growth in his hand. So if I spread this around myself, other stalkers would detect the scent and believe the area belongs to an established pack. They might avoid confrontation. His third weapon. The creatures respected territory. If June could make his camp smell like the lair of a powerful stalker pack, maybe they would leave him alone. By the 12th day, June felt ready. He had fire. He had sound. He had scent. It was time to stop running and build a place to stand. He chose a small clearing near a stream. There was fresh water, good sight lines, and several thermal vents nearby. He spent 2 days building walls from fallen branches and metal sheets from the shuttle wreckage. He positioned his speakers around the perimeter. He spread the orange fungus in a wide circle. On the night of the 14th day, he lit fires around his camp and waited. The attack came just before dawn. June had made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He had built his defenses to protect against the night, but the stalkers were smarter than that. They waited until his fires burned low in the early morning hours. When the fuel was almost gone and the flames were weak, they came from every direction at once. June heard them first. The clicking and howling that filled the air. Then he saw them, dark shapes moving fast between the trees. His speakers were screaming disruptive sounds, but there were too many stalkers. They pushed through the noise, driven by hunger and the instinct to hunt. The first one broke through his wall like it was made of paper. June ran. There was nothing else he could do. He grabbed his blade and his supplies and ran into the jungle, leaving his camp behind. The stalkers chased him, their calls echoing through the trees. He ran for hours. His lungs burned. His legs screamed with pain, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Finally, as the sun rose higher, the stalkers gave up the chase. They were creatures of darkness, and the bright daylight made them uncomfortable. June collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath, his body covered in sweat and small wounds from branches and thorns. He had survived. Barely Bora spoke quietly in his ear. "Your camp has been destroyed. The stalkers are consuming your remaining supplies." June closed his eyes. 2 weeks of work, gone in minutes. He had underestimated them. He had thought his defenses were good enough, but good enough was not enough. Not on this planet. Not against these creatures. He needed something better. He needed a location that the stalkers would not just avoid, but truly fear. A place where his defenses could be permanent. A place so hostile that nothing else could survive there. When he opened his eyes, he noticed something on the horizon. A thin line of smoke rising into the sky. Not from fire, but from heat. Volcanic heat. June forced himself to stand. His body wanted to rest, but his mind would not let him. He started walking toward the smoke. It took him most of the day to reach it. What he found was a massive clearing, almost a kilometer wide. The ground was black volcanic rock, broken by dozens of thermal vents that sprayed hot steam into the air. Pools of acidic water bubbled and hissed. Sharp obsidian formations rose from the ground like teeth. The heat was intense. Even at the edge, nothing lived here. No plants, no animals, no stalkers. It was the most dangerous place on the planet, and that made it perfect. June looked at the hostile landscape before him. Most people would see death. He saw opportunity. He saw walls that would never fall. He saw heat that would never stop burning. He saw a fortress waiting to be built. "This is it," he said to Bora. "This is where I make my stand." "The environment is extremely hazardous," Bora replied. "Survival here will require careful planning." June smiled despite his exhaustion. Careful planning was exactly what he was good at. The beasts of Verathnine thought they were the hunters. They were about to learn they were wrong. Park June called the place the Ring. It was not a name he chose for beauty. He chose it because the volcanic clearing was shaped like a massive ring, with thermal vents and acid pools forming a natural barrier around a slightly cooler center. That center, about 200 meters wide, would become his home. But first, he had to build it. The work began on day 16. June walked the entire clearing, mapping every vent, every pool, every safe path through the dangerous terrain. He measured temperatures. He tested the stability of the ground. He learned which areas were solid rock and which would crumble under weight. The first priority was shelter. The center of the ring was hot, but survivable. June found a spot where the ground was stable and the heat was bearable. He built a raised platform using metal sheets salvaged from the shuttle crash, lifting his living space above the hot ground. It was not comfortable, but it was safe. The second priority was the fire line. June had learned from his failure at the first camp. Fire was useful, but temporary fires went out. He needed something that would burn forever. The thermal vents gave him the answer. He spent 4 days creating channels in the volcanic rock, guiding the hot gases from nearby vents toward a ring around his camp. Then he placed fuel cells at key points along this ring, cells that would ignite when exposed to the vent gases. The result was a permanent circle of flame that surrounded his shelter. But June was not satisfied with simple fire. He remembered how the stalkers tracked heat. Regular, predictable heat was something they could adapt to. So he made the fire unpredictable. He built simple mechanical devices using wire and metal, devices that would randomly block and unblock the gas flow. This made the flames rise and fall at unexpected intervals. Sometimes they burned bright. Sometimes they died to embers. Sometimes they exploded upward with sudden force. The pattern was never the same twice. To human eyes, it looked like chaos. To the stalkers, it would be a wall of confusing, possible heat. The third priority was sound. June gathered all the electronic equipment he could salvage from the crash site. He made 3 dangerous trips back to the wreckage, always during daylight, always watching for stalkers. He collected speakers, wires, power cells, and anything else that could produce noise. He built 7 speaker towers around the perimeter of the ring. Each tower was positioned between thermal vents, protected by the heat on either side. He programmed each tower to emit different infrasound frequencies at random intervals. But this time, he was not just making disruptive noise. He was sending a message. During his weeks of observation, June had learned some of the stalkers' simple language. Certain sounds meant danger. Certain sounds meant territory. Certain sounds meant stay away. He programmed his speakers to combine these sounds into something new. The speakers would tell any approaching stalker that this territory belonged to a massive pack. A pack larger and stronger than any that existed. A pack that would destroy any intruder. It was a lie, of course. There was no pack. There was only one tired human, but the stalkers would not know that. They would only hear the sounds, and the sounds would make them afraid. The 4th priority was sent. June returned to the jungle. One final time to collect the orange fungus. He gathered as much as he could carry, filling every container he had. Then he brought it back to the ring, spread it in thick bands around his camp. The fungus did not survive long in the volcanic heat. But as it died, it released massive amounts of the territorial chemical into the air. The smell was terrible to June, like burning metal and rotting fruit. But to the stalkers, it would smell like something else entirely. It would smell like the lair of an ancient and powerful creature. Something that had claimed this territory long ago and never left. Something that should not be challenged. June reapplied the fungus every few days, keeping the scent strong and fresh. The wind would carry it into the jungle, warning any stalker within kilometers that this place was forbidden. The 5th priority was the final touch. The detail that would complete his fortress. During his time in the jungle, June had noticed that some creatures on Vareth 9 had bioluminescent organs. They glowed in the dark, creating points of light throughout the jungle night. He had also noticed that stalkers, despite being blind, reacted to these lights. Bora helped him understand why. The stalkers did not see light the way humans did, but they could detect it through their electromagnetic senses. And certain patterns of light triggered deep instincts in their minds. Large glowing circles, for example, looked like eyes. The eyes of a massive predator watching from the darkness. June collected bioluminescent organs from dead creatures he found in the jungle. He brought them back to the ring and arranged them on tall poles around his camp. He positioned them carefully, creating the illusion of dozens of huge eyes staring outward into the night. When darkness fell, his camp would glow with watching eyes. Eyes that never blinked. Eyes that never looked away. Eyes that followed any creature that came near. By day 5, the fortress was complete. June stood at the center of his creation and looked at what he had built. The fire ring burned and flickered around him. The speaker towers hummed with sounds he could not hear, but the stalkers would feel in their bones. The territorial scent hung heavy in the hot air. And waiting for darkness were the glowing eyes that would watch the jungle all night long. It was not beautiful. It was rough and ugly and barely held together. But it was his. That night, he got his first test. Bora detected a stalker approaching from the north. June watched through the heat shimmer as the creature emerged from the jungle and stopped at the edge of the ring. It was a medium-sized stalker. It's probably a scout from a nearby pack. Its tendrils stretched toward the volcanic clearing, sensing the heat, the sound, the scent. Its body tensed with uncertainty. June did not move. He stood beside his shelter and waited. The stalker took one step into the ring, then another. The flames flared up as if in warning. The speakers changed their tone, producing a deep rumbling sound that vibrated the air. The creature's tendrils pulled back against its head. It circled left, then right, trying to find a path through the defenses. There was none. Every direction offered the same message. Danger, territory, stay away. Finally, after almost an hour of circling, the stalker retreated. It moved backward into the jungle. Its tendrils still pointed toward June, still watching, but it did not attack. It did not try again. It simply left. Bora's voice was quiet in June's helmet. Behavioral analysis indicates the creature registered your camp as a threat level alpha territory. It will not just avoid this place, June. It will warn others. June allowed himself a small smile. For the first time since crashing on this planet, he felt something like hope. He was no longer running. He was no longer hiding. He had built something that even the apex predators of Verithnine respected. The next morning, Bora reported that the scout stalker had returned to its pack. Shortly after, entire pack moved its territory 3 kilometers further from the ring. Word was spreading through the jungle. Something lived in the volcanic clearing. Something powerful. Something to be feared. June looked up at the alien sky and counted the days. 45 down. 45 to go. He could do this. He could survive. The beasts could howl all they wanted. They would not touch his home. The stalkers stopped coming to the ring at first. It was just the nearest packs. They rerouted their hunting paths, avoiding the volcanic clearing entirely. Then the change spread further. Packs from kilometers away began adjusting their territories, creating a growing circle of empty jungle around June's fortress. Bora tracked the patterns with fascination. They are communicating about you, she told June on day 52. The infrasound network across this region has changed. They are sharing warnings, telling each other to stay away. June sat on his platform eating the last of his emergency rations. He had supplemented his food with edible plants from the jungle edge, carefully tested by Bora for safety. It was not a pleasant diet, but it kept him alive. "What are they saying?" he asked. "I cannot translate precisely, but the pattern suggests they have given your territory a classification. Something they have never encountered before. Something they do not understand." June smiled at that. Humans were good at being things other species did not understand. Days passed. 55, 60, 65. June improved his fortress where he could. He strengthened the speaker towers. He expanded the fire ring. He even built a small observation platform at the edge of the ring where he could watch the jungle without leaving his protected zone. The stalkers had become legends to him. He saw their shadows sometimes, far away, moving through the trees. He heard their calls at night, distant and careful, but they never came close. Not anymore. Young stalkers were different, though. Bora detected them occasionally, curious adolescents who wandered too near the forbidden zone. They would approach the edge of the ring, tendrils extended with youthful curiosity. Every time, adult stalkers appeared within minutes to pull them back. June watched this happen again and again. The adults were teaching the young ones, teaching them about the danger in the volcanic clearing, teaching them about the thing that lived there, the thing that should not be challenged. On day 70, the Alpha came. Bora detected it first, a massive heat signature moving through the jungle from the west. It was not alone. At least 30 other stalkers traveled with it, the largest pack June had ever seen. "This is unusual," Bora said, her voice carrying concern. "The approaching creature is significantly larger than any stalker previously recorded. Its infrasound signature suggests extreme age and dominance. This may be the alpha of the entire continental population." June stood and walked to his observation platform. His heart was beating faster, but his hands were steady. He had prepared for this possibility. He had known that eventually something would come to challenge him. The pack emerged from the jungle as the sun was setting. They spread out along the tree line, forming a wall of dark bodies and waving tendrils. In the center, towering above the others, was the Alpha. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of a normal stalker. Its 6 limbs were thick with muscle, and its hide was covered in old scars. This creature had fought many battles and won them all. It had led its pack for decades, maybe centuries. It feared nothing. Until now, the Alpha walked forward alone, leaving its pack behind. Its movement was slow and deliberate, each step a statement of power. It reached the edge of the ring and stopped. June watched from his platform. The fire ring flickered, and flared. The speakers hummed their warnings. The glowing eyes watched from every direction. But the Alpha did not react like the others. It did not flinch. It did not retreat. Instead, it walked into the ring. June felt a chill despite the volcanic heat. This creature was not afraid. It was challenging him, testing him. Demanding to know if the stories were true, the Alpha pushed through the heat and the noise and the scent. It walked over the black volcanic rock, its tendrils pointing directly at June. The other stalkers behind it made sounds of distress. But the Alpha ignored them. June made a decision. He could not hide. He could not run. If he showed fear now, everything he had built would be meaningless. The stalkers would know he was just a weak human pretending to be a monster. He walked down from his platform and stepped out of his shelter. The Alpha was only 50 meters away now, still advancing. Up close, it was even more terrifying. Its tendrils were longer than June's arms. Its claws could cut him in half with a single swipe. June picked up a torch in his blade. He stood at the edge of his fire ring and waited. The Alpha stopped. Its tendrils stretched toward June, sensing him, analyzing him. This was the moment. The creature was deciding whether he was worthy of fear or just another piece of prey. June did something that no prey would ever do. He stepped forward. He walked through his own fire ring, feeling the heat burn his skin, and stopped on the other side. Now there was nothing between him and the Alpha but empty volcanic rock. He held his torch high and his blade ready. "You want to know what I am?" June said. He knew the creature could not understand his words, but it could understand his tone, his heartbeat, his refusal to be afraid. "I am the thing you have never faced before. I am the thing that does not run." The Alpha made a sound. It was low and deep, almost below hearing. It circled to the left, and June turned with it. It circled to the right, and June turned again. Always facing, never looking away. The creature tested his defenses. It lunged forward slightly, a fake attack designed to make prey flee. June did not move. It made a terrible screaming sound, a noise that would terrify any animal on this planet. June stood still. The standoff continued for almost an hour. The other stalkers watched from the jungle edge, completely silent. June's muscles ached. His eyes burned from the volcanic fumes. But he did not waver. Finally, the Alpha did something unexpected. It lowered its head. Not in submission, not exactly, but in acknowledgement. This human was not prey. This human was something else. Something the Alpha did not fully understand, but something that deserved respect. The massive creature backed away slowly. It turned and walked toward its waiting pack. The other stalkers parted to let it through, then followed it back into the jungle. June watched them go. When the last stalker disappeared into the trees, he fell to his knees. His entire body was shaking. He had never been so afraid in his life, but he had not shown it. He had not let them see. Bora's voice was soft. "The Alpha Pack is retreating. They are moving their territory to the far side of the continent." It came out as a broken, exhausted sound, but it was real. He had won. Not by killing the Alpha. Not by driving it away with fire and noise. He had won by refusing to be what they expected. He had won by being human. In the days that followed, the change was complete. No stalker came within 2 kilometers of the ring. The jungle around the volcanic clearing became a dead zone. A territory so feared that even the apex predators of Varathnine would not enter it. On day 85, June recorded a message on his suit's damaged recorder. He did not know if anyone would ever hear it, but he wanted to leave something behind, just in case. "If you are hearing this," he said, "I am still alive. The beasts that hunt this world learn something humans have always known. We do not just survive, we make the darkness afraid of us." He looked out at the empty jungle, at the silence where howls used to fill the night. 5 more days. He could do this. The hunt was over, and the human had won. The rescue ship entered. Varathnine orbit on the morning of day 90, Captain Yunte. stood on the bridge and looked down at the green planet below. He had commanded search and rescue missions for 15 years. He had found survivors before, against terrible odds, but he had never been to a planet like this one. "What are our chances?" asked Kong Su, standing beside him. She had been recovered from her escape pod 3 months ago, picked up by a passing cargo ship. She had spent every day since then, fighting to organize this rescue mission. Tay did not answer immediately. He pulled up the file on Verithnine, the reports from previous survey teams, the survival statistics. Everything he read told him the same thing. "I will be honest with you," he finally said. "No one has ever survived alone on that surface for more than 3 days. It has been 90. Looked at the planet with hard eyes. June is not like anyone else. Tay nodded slowly. He had heard stories about Park June, former military, survey engineer. The kind of person who solved problems that others called impossible. Maybe, just maybe, this would be different. "Take us down," he ordered. The rescue shuttle descended through the atmosphere, heading toward the last known coordinates of June's crashed section. As they flew lower, Sue watched the jungle pass beneath them. It was dense and dark, filled with shadows that seemed to move on their own. Then she noticed something strange. "Captain," she said, "look at the scanner." Tay looked. The shuttle's sensors detected no large life forms below them. The jungle was empty. Completely empty? "That is not right," he muttered. "This planet is supposed to be full of predators. Where are they?" No one had an answer. The shuttle flew on, following the signal from June's survival suit. As they got closer, the sensors showed an even stranger pattern. The jungle was empty in a perfect circle, kilometers wide. Something had driven all the predators away from this area. Then they saw the ring. From above, it looked like a scar on the planet, a massive volcanic clearing in the middle of the green jungle. Steam rose from dozens of vents. Pools of water bubbled in the heat, and in the center, something was burning. "What is that?" one of the crew members asked. Sue leaned forward, her eyes wide. She could see structures in the clearing. Metal platforms. A ring of fire surrounding what looked like a small shelter. "It is a camp," she whispered. "He built a camp." The shuttle circled lower. As they approached, more details became visible. Speaker towers positioned around the perimeter. Lines of strange orange growth spread in patterns. Glowing objects arranged on tall poles. It looked like a fortress. It looked like something out of an ancient legend. Captain Tay found a safe landing spot at the edge of the clearing. The shuttle touched down on solid volcanic rock, and the crew prepared to exit. They wore full protective suits, armed with weapons in case of predator attack. But there were no predators. The jungle behind them was silent. The only sounds were the hissing of thermal vents and the crackling of distant flames. Sue was the first one out. She walked across the black rock, feeling the heat through her suit, her eyes fixed on the shelter at the center of the clearing. The fire ring burned on either side of her, but there was a path through it, a safe corridor that led inside. She walked the path and stopped at the edge of the inner camp. A figure emerged from the shelter. He was thinner than she remembered. His suit was patched and worn. His face was covered with weeks of rough beard, and his eyes had a sharpness that had not been there before. But it was him. It was June. "You are late," he said. Sue could not speak. She ran forward and threw her arms around him, holding him tight, feeling tears run down her face. He was alive. Against everything, against all odds, he was alive. June hugged her back. For a moment, his body relaxed. For a moment, he was not the thing in the volcanic clearing, the monster the stalkers feared. He was just a man who had been alone for a very long time. The rest of the crew approached slowly, staring at the fortress around them. Captain Tay walked up to June, his face a mixture of shock and respect. "We expected to find remains," he said quietly. "We never expected to find this." June released Sue and looked around at his creation. The fire ring. The speaker, towers. The glowing eyes. The walls that no beast would cross. "I did not have a choice," he said. "They hunt everything on this planet. Everything runs from them. Everything hides from them. Everything dies. He paused. I decided to be something different. Tay shook his head slowly. You did not just survive. You conquered. June did not answer. He walked back to his shelter and began collecting his few possessions. There was not much to take. Some tools. Some recordings. The blade that had been with him since the first night. As he worked, Sue looked out at the jungle. It was still silent. Still empty? Where are the predators? She asked. The report said this planet was full of them. Bora answered from June's helmet, loud enough for everyone to hear. Voidstalker activity in this region dropped to 0 approximately 40 days ago. The nearest pack is now located over 200 kilometers away. They have abandoned their traditional hunting grounds entirely. Tay asked. June straightened up, his pack on his shoulder. He looked at the captain with eyes that had seen too much, because they learned to be afraid. The walk back to the shuttle was quiet. The crew kept looking over their shoulders, expecting something to attack. Nothing did. The jungle remained empty and silent. As the shuttle lifted off, Sue sat beside June and watched Verathnine shrink below them. The green jungle, the volcanic scar, the fortress that had kept one man alive for 90 days. How did you do it? She asked. Really? How did you survive? June was quiet for a long moment. He watched the planet disappear into the distance, becoming just another point of light in the dark. I stopped thinking like prey, he said. Every creature on that planet runs or hides or fights and loses. That is what the stalkers expect. That is what they know. But humans are different. We do not just react. We plan. We adapt. We change the rules. He turned to look at her. I could not outrun them. I could not outfight them. So I made them believe I was something worse than they were. I made them think that hunting me would cost more than I was worth, and it worked. It worked. The shuttle docked with the rescue ship, and the crew began preparing for the long journey home. But before they left, Tay called June to the bridge. I have to report what happened here, the captain said. The survey commission will want to know everything. They might even want to study your methods, use them on other dangerous planets. June nodded slowly. They can study whatever they want, but they should understand something first. What is that? I did not create something new down there. I used something that humans have always had. The ability to refuse, to say no, I will not run. No, I will not be prey. No, I will not die today. He looked out the window at the stars. Every human has that. We just forget sometimes. Tay was silent for a moment. Then he extended his hand. June shook it. Welcome back to civilization, June. June smiled, but there was something different in his eyes. Something that would never quite go away. He had seen the darkness of Verathnine. He had faced the monsters that lived there, and he had made them turn and run. That changed a person forever. Years later, alien species studying Verathnine made a curious discovery. An entire region of the main continent had been abandoned by the Voidstalkers. The creatures would not enter it, would not even approach it. Their infrasound networks carried warnings about the area, passed down from generation to generation. The aliens did not understand. There was nothing there now. Just an old volcanic clearing and the rusted remains of some primitive structures. Whatever had lived there was long gone. But the stalkers remembered.